Hello and welcome to the arcade? Wait, where's the arcade? Where am I? Oh boy, this is not right. But I think most of us at some point in our lives have thought about this scenario. What if one day you were stranded on a desert island and could only bring 5 games with you to play while you were there? What 5 games would you pick and why? It's a fun thought experiment, and while obviously it doesn't hold up to logic if you think about it for more than 1 second, it's still really fascinating to think about and to hear other people's choices. So I thought today, since I'm here, I'll talk about what 5 games I would have brought with me to this deserted island if I had known in advance that I'd be here, and could only bring 5 games for some reason. So here we go, here are my picks for the best desert island video games. Now, first, I think we have to lay down some ground rules. We're going to assume that there is no internet here on the island, so any online connection requirement for a game or any of its features like multiplayer or updates is out of the question. We are strictly going with offline single-player games for this list. And no platforms are off the table. Home consoles, handhelds, and PC are all fair game. Now, since we only get 5 picks, I think it's wise to pick from 5 different categories or genres. I think it's probably best to give myself as much variety as possible since I'm counting on these games as my only form of entertainment while I'm stranded here. And while at first I thought I'd pick a survival game like Stranded Deep or Ark, I think that's probably not such a great idea because then my escape into gaming would just remind me that I'm stranded in real life too. So what would I pick first? Well, I'm thinking an open world game to start. It seems like the most obvious choice. Open world games typically feature a ton of content and almost endless amounts of replayability when you have so much freedom to customize your character, utilize different play styles, and explore a vast game world filled with NPCs and side quests. When you combine these 3 ideas and iterate on them, the replayability becomes a huge benefit to the game. So what are my favorite open world games? Well, Skyrim is my number 1. I have played through that game countless times. It has such a distinct style and voice, and all of the areas in the game are instantly recognizable and iconic to me. But without internet, I lose access to mods. So that means the replayability, while still pretty high, becomes slightly more limited than I'm used to. But still, according to howlongtobeat.com, we still have a solid 234 hours of game time to get through. But how many of those hours are actually spent doing something fun? I can tell you it's certainly not 100%. So let's look at another open world game that recently made my list of favorites, Elden Ring. According to howlongtobeat.com, Elden Ring comes in at only 133 hours. That seems kind of lowballing it to me. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how they're counting up the hours, but I can tell you that I've spent more than 133 hours in this game, and I haven't even played through with more than 1 different character yet. I bet there's way more to do in this game than this site is giving it credit for. Let's say the 133 hours is to get all the trophies or achievements, or at least complete the game doing all the side quests for the first playthrough. But what if you multiply that by the amount of different starting classes there are in the game, or possible builds there are to play with? I think it would come out to way more than 133. Plus, the high difficulty of the game would add some time to the overall count. I'd probably have a ton of fun learning each boss to a point where I could beat them all without taking damage. Well, I say that, but I haven't actually ever really tried to beat a boss without taking any damage, so who knows, maybe that would be too frustrating for me. But even still, the amount of replayability due to the vastly different classes and builds would be enough for Elden Ring to edge out Skyrim. Of course, Skyrim does have different builds and playstyles too, but I think Elden Ring's dynamic bosses and high level of challenge are where it gets the edge. So my first pick is Elden Ring. Next, I have got to pick a Monster Hunter game. I know, I said no internet connection. So that means multiplayer and event quests are taken out of the equation for the most part. But still, I just can't go to a deserted island without a Monster Hunter game to play. At the time of making this video, Monster Hunter Wilds is not out yet, otherwise I think I'd blindly pick that one just for how excited I am. But the next closest to that would be Monster Hunter World, of course. I have played a ton of that game and I'm very familiar with its mechanics and monsters. But the fluidity of the combat and exploration is something that never gets old, no matter how many times you play it. It's also still a visual marvel. Looking at this game, even on the launch PS4, it is still gorgeous in my opinion. But in my opinion, there are too many features of this game tied to the online. I would lose out on the daily sign-in bonuses, which don't matter that much, but I'd also lose out on the event quests. The event quests are where most of the real challenge of most Monster Hunter games comes from, and without that, even Monster Hunter Rise is probably less than a 40-hour game. But there is one Monster Hunter game that has everything available offline, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. And according to HowLongToBeat.com, all that content totals to 877 hours of gameplay. Now, this is a staggering number to fully complete any video game. But if this is not even counting playing through the game with different weapon types, this could be an almost infinite number. I have only played about 60 hours or so in Generations Ultimate, so I'm actually leaning toward this one being my pick. It's relatively new to me, it's got the old school style of hunting that I love, and it's got over 800 hours of gameplay to complete everything. Yep, I gotta go with this one. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate is my number 2 pick. 2 down, 3 to go. Next, I'm thinking I want a racing game. I don't really talk about racing games a whole lot, and to be honest, that's just because there aren't that many that I really love. I do love every game in the Mario Kart franchise, and I've played a good bit of Star Wars Racer, Road Redemption, and Need for Speed Carbon. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe could potentially be a good pick. It's fun, and it's got a lot of varied courses and a lot of different ways to customize your kart. But if we're just counting the base game, then I'm not getting all the DLC from the booster pass, so that limits me a bit. But let's not count it out just yet. My other pick I'm thinking about is Trackmania Nations Forever. Trackmania is one of those rare games that has always been around for me. Ever since 2008, there hasn't been a year gone by where I haven't played it at least a little bit. And I still don't have all of the author medals on all tracks. I think what might be really fun is to take my time on the desert island and really focus on getting every single author medal in the game. And if I'm allowed the foresight to bring a list of world records, maybe I could try to chip away at one of those. Who am I kidding? I don't have the skill for that, but it could be a fun way to pass the time. I think simply for the replayability most of all, but also for the fun track layouts and the tight controls, Trackmania Nations Forever gets the edge here. Pick number 3 is Trackmania. Next, I have got to pick a strategy game. Now, I'm typically into real-time strategy specifically. You know the kind, where you have to manage resources and combat all at once, instead of during phases or turns. So that includes games like Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth, Supreme Commander, Empire Earth, and StarCraft 2. Come to think of it, I have played many RTS games in my life. I've always loved the idea of being the commander of a huge army and seeing all my little minions move around the battlefield based on my commands. But seriously, RTS games are so fun because it's like the upgraded version of playing with action figures. Now I get to see all my guys battle it out in real time instead of moving each one individually with my hands. The ones I remember most fondly over the years are definitely StarCraft 2, Battle for Middle-earth 1 and 2, Supreme Commander, Company of Heroes, and Star Wars Empire at War. But the question becomes, which one of these would last me the longest? One series that I really love but haven't mentioned yet is the Total War series. I poured so many hours into Rome and Medieval 2. Honestly, mostly just doing custom battles to see how things play out when you have total control over all factors of the battle. And seeing the huge armies clash together is still one of the most satisfying feelings in all of video games. That will just never get old. And when I think about the context of this list, while I would love to hang on to StarCraft and Battle for Middle-earth, I think I'd have to choose Rome Total War. It just has bigger battles, more customization, and many, many more hours of possible gameplay than the other two. Rome is a beautiful, classic game that I will probably enjoy for the rest of my life. Might as well bring it to the desert island. Still, I'm not going to claim that it's my favorite RTS game. That's still StarCraft 2, with Battle for Middle-earth being a close second. But because we're talking about desert island, gotta go with Rome Total War. For my last pick, I'm thinking either a sports or puzzle game. And if you think about it, they tend to play out pretty similar to each other. Some of my favorite sports games are definitely the Mario sports games like Mario Tennis Power Tour and Mario Golf Super Rush. But I also love MVP Baseball 2005 and Backyard Football. But for puzzle games, really all I can think of is Tetris. However, people tend to get a lot of mileage out of Tetris. It's virtually impossible to master, yet so simple to understand. And the feeling of breaking your high score never gets old. Tetris has the gameplay of a puzzle absolutely nailed. But there's one more sports game that might beat it out for me, and that is none other than the greatest RPG of all time, Tennis Elbow 2013. My most played game on Steam and my favorite tennis game of all time is Tennis Elbow. It does a perfect job of letting you live out the fantasy of being a tennis pro, taking on the tour, facing all of your favorite real-life players, and becoming the champion of all 4 Grand Slams. But wait, hold on a minute. I've been playing this game with mods for like the last 6 years. All of the real names of players, venues, and tournaments are all because of modders. In the base game, the real characters and events have all had their names masked due to the game not having the license to portray any of them. But does that harm the gameplay at all? Well, no, but you can't tell me it's more fun to play against Ricardo Federer, Nenad Djokovic, and Ruben Nadal than the real deal. This is a hard one because I would also bring Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort into the mix here. If I had one of those, I could also stay fit while being stranded. But seriously, despite how short the Wii Sports games are, they are, in my opinion, infinitely replayable. And I know I said I wouldn't pick Stranded Deep because it would remind me too much of my real-world situation. But there's something about Maka Woohoo that I think would actually help me forget that I'm stranded in real life, and therefore make me wish I was stranded on an island like Maka Woohoo. Then I'd look up, and I'd see that I actually am stranded, and then I'd want to escape back into my video games to forget about my real-world trouble. And then there would be Maka Woohoo again, and the cycle would repeat again and again infinitely until I get rescued. So I think that settles it. Wii Sports Resort gets the pick for sports/puzzle game. And that's it. These are the 5 games I'd bring with me to a deserted island. Elden Ring, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, Trackmania Nations Forever, Rome Total War, and Wii Sports Resort. To be honest, there are so many great games out there that you could pick from. So many video games out there have almost infinite replay value, at least the ones that I really like. I'm not typically one to buy every new game that comes out, so you know the games that I do buy, I play them to death. And I'd love to hear your picks, and I'd also love to hear why my picks are wrong. So let me know in the comments, or send me out a message in a bottle out here to my island. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.